Hey friends. Boy, I'm looking rather washed out. Anyway, so I don't always do this, but I also don't always pick a select number of decks to work with for a month. And I did that for May, and I thought I would share those decks with you and just talk through my experience because I love listening to other people do this, and I'll share it with you. So first things first, I have to take back some joy and excitement from earlier this month, which was these bad boys, these Spectrum Noir glitter pens, the brush pens. Um, they came in this box. You can also get them on Amazon in like a package that looks like this. There we go. So here's the deal. So I'm not having this problem with the Bleen deck that I did, but I did edge the Darkness of Light, this new edition in it, and you can kind of see it here. And it looks really cool. It doesn't look really cool on the video, but I'm having a tremendous amount of ink bleed on my hands when I shuffle. And that's after a week, and then I used this clear overlay marker on it last night. I'm going to give it a few more days, but I don't know if you can see my thumb. It's pretty clean there. And, you know, it's not just the thumbs, but after riffle shuffling a few times or just overhand shuffling, you know, I get a fair amount of ink, of black ink on my hands, which sucks. I'm going to show you. So I'm probably going to take that video down. You can see it's a little gray, you know, kind of gray and sparkly, but it definitely gets all over in a really unpleasant way. So the clear overlay did not do much to help. And whoops, I'm just going to try to find a place to put this. Yet anyway, it's turned into more of a project than I really wanted it to be. So for the you know, the benefit of it looking cool, it sort of is more work than it really wants to be for edging anything, in my humble opinion, because I have very low tolerance for like doing things over and over again. So that's kind of a disappointment. Maybe the cardstock of that deck, which I actually really like the cardstock of that deck, but it seems to just not want to hold on to the ink for this particular one. So if you do this, what I would recommend actually is probably not using the black brush marker from Spectrum Noir, but to use a black marker that you know doesn't bleed, and then get the clear one and do an overlay on that, because that I think actually could look cool, and you'll get glitter on your fingers a little bit, but you won't probably get any ink leak. So that sucks. But that's that. So what else did I use this month? So actually, let's talk about this briefly, because I got these from lovely Queen Osset, Oya's girl on YouTube. She sent me a couple Lenormand decks, which was really generous, and I've been playing with them a little bit. So the first one is Golden Lenormand Oracle Lenormand. I never know what the right way is to say it. This is a Los Scarabeo deck. It's large for an Oracle, for a Lenormand, but it's really cool. It's got gold. It's so hard to show this. Gold detailing on it. And this is, I think, this, you know, there are other versions of this deck that have that are smaller, and I'm never going to be able to do this effect. There we go. You can kind of see the gold there, that don't have the gold on it, and that may be a more normal size, but it's really pretty. And I actually don't mind necessarily large Lenormand cards if I'm not using them for a Grand Tableau, which I don't do much, because everyone knows that my Lenormand experience has been wonky. I'm having better luck. But it's got a really thin, nice cardstock, and it shuffles really cool. So there's that. Thank you for that. And then also Alexander Musruck's Lenormand Oracle cards was a gift as well. And it's a really nice deck as well. It's got really nice cardstock. It's gilded. I don't love branding on the back of cards in general. It's one of the things about the Bonefire that I don't like that much. Ooh, I'm getting all... Can you see that? My glasses are getting steamy. I got out of the shower just now and getting a little steamy. But it's got like a nice classic feel to it. Whoops. I'm a Yes. And the cardstock is really nice. It's matte. It feels really good. So I got those in that same lovely gift, which, I love the generosity of this community. I dropped a card. Let me grab it so that I don't roll over it. So where's the lid? And then another thing that she sent me, which was really awesome, and I'm really excited about, is Tarot of Loca, which is essentially the card game. It's a card game with a little white booklet that talks about how to play Taroki. And then these great, beautiful cards. I don't think I've even shuffled this, but I have looked through it. I love these. Can you see that? So it's a lot like a playing card deck, but the art is really rad. And so they're not, they're actually reversible to the point of like not being able to tell that the fronts and backs are reversed. And the minors are just pips because it is, it's a playing card deck and they go by element. And the courts are really rad. So I could actually see using this for readings. Gee, I'm such a mess. But love this. So really excited about that. And I actually want to get some people together over to play Taroki because I think that would be really cool. And I'm among those who loves that Tarot started as a game. All right, so what else? Let's talk about this deck because complete, total gagged surprise was not. So this is, this has been a trend on the discussion groups on Facebook right now is FOMO, fear of missing out. This was definitely a FOMO deck. I pre-ordered this mostly because everyone talks about it, like it's great. And the pre-orders were coming to a close and I said, screw it. I should get it. But I knew I wouldn't like it. And everyone's seen this deck, so I probably don't even need to bother showing any of the cards. But and everyone's got the new cold stamp version of it. So this is shuffled. This deck shuffles like crazy. I will say, just to be that person, it does overhand shuffle a little less well. I find that there's a little bit of grip on the cards. But I loved this to a degree that I was not expecting remotely. I don't know why. You know what I mean? Maybe it's because sometimes when your expectations are really high, like the Fountain Tarot, you put so much pressure on it to be like the perfect deck. And then, so this is the Devil card that I chose. I know that the other Devil card is the traditional one. It's actually the cover of the book. But this, and I love them both. This one seemed to connect more to the Lover's card, which is the alternate Lover's card that I chose because I really hated the original Lover's card with those two like Puritan-looking people on it. And it just had a slightly more Marseille, I guess, feel to it. Just a little bit more something. It's always the way. I should have prepared this sooner. But actually, I forgot that there were options in this deck. I actually recorded a walkthrough of this deck just to share my thoughts about it because I was so completely and totally surprised by it. Well, it doesn't matter. If you've seen the alternate Lover's card, which has the gorgeous blue background, literally the last card, I liked the connection to the Devil between these two. Like the flow and the energy of these two cards felt very connected and similar, and actually these cards have a connection to me. And actually, if you look at the Waite-Smith system, there's a connection between those cards anyway. So I was blown away by how beautiful this deck is, how consistent it felt, and just, this reminds me of The Tempest. It reminds me of Shakespeare. This is the Tower. It's totally Rider-Waite-Smith, but just, I don't know. I think, so I have the Bohemian Gothic, and actually another video I was thinking about doing was doing a side-by-side with these two, the Bohemian Gothic and this, and I just, I decided that, like, this stuff has been done, and I try not to put the same content out into the world that other people have done better than I can, or have, or would. But I just thought, oh, those decks, and I did do a reading with the two, a Light and Shadow using this, and the Bohemian and Marseille deck, because I thought that was a cool thing to do. Um, but I was so delighted by how much I liked this deck. And that is so often not the case, you know? And this was actually a month of 3 surprises, so I'm going to talk about those 3 surprises. This was one of the 3 decks that I did not expect to fall in love with, and so this will probably stay out for a while. So I did, well, I guess I'm going to limit myself to stuff I actually really used, because I did get the Tira Marchetti retrospective deck, and I really like it, but I only used it for the walkthrough and then for, I think, one of my daily readings on Instagram. So the next one that I got, and I had sort of gone back and forth on this one, and I did do a walkthrough of this, but this is the Petra K, which is sort of a Tothy deck, but it does not have keywords on the cards. It has the title in 3 languages. So it's kind of brilliant. It's kind of gorgeous. It's not kind of any of those things. It is those things. And I used this a few times, and I really like it. I haven't sort of found my heart singing quite the way I would when I read with it, as I hoped. But I think, it definitely is going to stay around, because it's really, really exceptionally beautiful. And again, I like that it has a Thothi quality without the keywords, because I love the Zilliq Tarot. I love the art on that deck. It's hard to unsee the keywords, though. And again, I talked about this, I think, in that walkthrough, or one of them. They're not really keywords. They're really the esoteric titles according to the Golden Dawn, or at least according to Crowley's adaptation of the esoteric titles of the Golden Dawn. And if you look at some books, or Walden Ruthen's correspondence course, they talk about the esoteric titles on those cards. And I think, it's interesting, but it's hard for me as a reader not to be influenced by those. And I don't like, I've talked about this before. There's only a few decks. There's one right there, the Dreams of Gaia, I wish had keywords. And then I like that the Wildwood has keywords. But again, I think of those as sort of terroricals. So I don't mind keywords on those, because they don't necessarily need, they don't work with the traditional system, or they take the traditional system and they adapt it. So Petra K, here's the box. I think this is gorgeous. It's available. This is, I think, a new reprint. It says Piatnik on it, but I ordered this right from the artist. I think Annika, nobody here, had the link in her walkthrough video, and that's how I got the information. I don't know that this is still a Piatnik deck. I don't know if they just reprinted the box, but really enjoying that. So the next one was a Marseille deck, and I only used one Marseille deck this month, which is totally unlike me. And it was the Millennium Tarot de Marseille edition Millennium, which I got at the Reader Studio from the from Collect Tarot. So it comes in a great box. And the reason I got this deck, it actually looks more or less identical to the Yoav Ben-Dov CBD, but the cardstock on this, I talked about this in my video, is so yummy and matte. And it has I don't know if you can see, yeah, you can. I cannot get the mirroring, and my computer is also sputtering, which makes me wonder if I'm going to have to do this again. I've been having some issues with my video recording on this thing. Anyway, the corners are rounded, but just so. But it's straight. It's Marseille, but I really like the sharpness of it. And the reason that I got it was the cardstock, but the cardstock is actually one of the reasons why I've not used it as much, because it's so thick that I have a hard time getting the deck cut to shuffle, and it does not bridge shuffle well at all. So, and I'm definitely a bridge shuffler. So while I love this deck, and I really like the cardstock, it probably will end up taking a back seat, to Ben-Dov's, which always sits here on my desk. So, But that was another one, and I really like it a lot. The cardstock is problematic for me. Even though the cardstock was the reason that I got it. So then another deck that I used a lot was an old friend that I haven't actually used much. I've had it probably as long as I've been reading tarot, and when I started, I really was on a search for something that was a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but that wasn't the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And in that process, I found a lot of things, and I was really addicted to Tarot Garden back then. And I bought this, which is the German version of the Margareta Peterson, with the famous backs. And I got this deck probably when I was 22 or 23. I mean, probably close to 16 years ago or something like that. And I thought, oh my God, this is one of the most beautiful decks I have ever seen, and I have no freaking idea what to do with it. The titles are in German. It is not Rider-Waite-Smith remotely. The minors have no, like, guiding scenes on them, although there are scenes or obviously illustrations, beautiful paintings. But I just didn't know what to do with it, and the titles were in German. And there wasn't an English version of this back then. And it sat on my shelf, and it actually shows up in a few of my favorites videos or decks that I think are, at the time, I thought were underrated. I feel like this deck has kind of exploded in the last few years. So anyway, I came back from the Reader Studio after using the last deck that I'm going to show you, and I said, you know, it reminds me a little bit of the Margareta Peterson. I think I should take it down from the shelf or get an English version. And so I started, you know, there were some things with the English version where there's one version that has borders on the backs, and as like a weirdo, I'm like, I don't want that, but I could trim it. And then I was like, wait, I already have it. So I just went through, and actually there are a couple title changes in the English version that I wasn't in love with. So I just went through with Google Translate, and I translated all the titles into English, and I wrote them on the card. You know, and I don't mind that, because actually the black on the purple isn't easy to see. So, you know what I mean? Like, it allows for a subtleness there, a subtlety, but it also allows me to use the deck. I didn't use this one as much as I was hoping for this month, but I did do at least one client reading with this. I have in my shop now a self-care reading that I'm also, you know, I talked about the third-party readings that I do, but I have a self-care reading in the shop that I really like, because it explores, I think, what's cool, like what self-care really should be for you at this time. Like, what's an area that requires care, what care actually looks like, what seems like self-care but isn't, and then how to measure your progress. And so the reading really doesn't. So I've been using that for this, or this for that. So that's the Margareta Peterson, which I've, after 15, 16 years, finally pulled out of its shelf, or out of its box. So the next thing, now I actually have 2 copies of this deck now. And I did a walkthrough of it after I had trimmed it, and liked the way it looks trimmed, but also I really missed the way it looked out of the box. So this is the 8 Coins Tattoo Tarot. This was the second surprise of the month. Again, a deck everyone has seen, I would say, by now. One of the popular ones. And that's, in a weird way, one of the reasons why it was a surprise, is because I have this sort of hipster reaction to anything that's super popular. Although I have wanted this for a while, because I remember seeing Veronica Jude's walkthroughs of it. I bought it and trimmed it and just sort of missed the borders. Which is so odd, you know, because normally I do like it trimmed, you know, so I thought about, like, offering the other one for trade, but, for trade, that sounds so dirty, if you know anything about gay culture. Anyway, the thing that I like about the borders on this deck is that it actually unifies the cards, because one of the things that I love about this deck is it actually reflects the evolution of the artist's work as she went through each card. So on each card is actually the number of the drawing and the order in which she did this, and that's one thing that I actually like having on here. When I trimmed it, I didn't. I love the High Priestess, and I sort of missed that, but also it is art, and it creates a frame, and that frame kind of unifies the deck, where the pictures change. You know, the art style changes over time, and I appreciate that she didn't go. I am using the new cards that she included because I do like them better, and I think there's something to be said for a second draft of anything. You know, as a writer, I think. But I don't. You know, there's only one or two cards I really don't like. I really hate the Six of Cups. I mean, hate is a strong word, but it just reminds me of like Archie comics. It's just a little hallmark for me. But that's probably the only one I really, really dislike um, that I can think of. Uh, yeah, there's some that I like wish were a little different, but that's the case with any deck, right? Anyway, so that's the one I don't like. But it just unifies the deck, and so I actually kind of think I prefer it with the border. So that's been sitting there, and I've been using that far more than I ever thought I would, because it's Rider-Waite-Smith, and everyone knows how I am about that. But I'm, you know, one of the things that was interesting about being at the Reader Studio, and everyone around me for the most part was using either a Thoth or a Rider-Waite-Smith, and the Rider-Waite-Smith decks were exponentially more in use than anything else. You know, I mean, that vintagey one that was an indie deck that's like playing card size with the sort of like lovely dirt. I love that deck, and I just never got it because I don't think I'll use it. But I think that that's probably one of my favorite Rider-Waite-Smith iterations. Everyone was using it, and so I showed up with my Marshmallow Marseille, and we started, I had the Marshmallow Marseille, which I used for my first reading, and then the second work was the workshop with Mary Kate Greer, and she did this thing around symbolism. So I used the it's right behind me, the Sheridan Douglas, which I chose that deck because it was Rider-Waite-Smith enough that there were pictures in it, but it's probably the least symbolic, the least illustrated simple deck that I have, which is why I brought it, and it ended up being not not helpful. So while I was there, I did do a walkthrough, and I talked about this, but I picked up the Japaridza, and this was the third surprise of the month, and really, actually, it was the first. And this became probably my most used, most favorite deck of the month. It's likely going to stay out for a while. I love using this for myself. I love using it for people. The only thing so there are two things I don't like about the deck. One is I don't like the pages as gestures. It's a small thing. I can live with it. And the other thing I don't like is the Emperor card. In fact, I hate the Emperor card. Like, where in the 8 Coins Tarot Tattoo Tarot I said it was harsh that I hate the Six of Cups because it was a little card. Like, that I feel like is a little overkill. But I hate the War card. Because I just hate it. You know what I mean? It's just not necessarily what the Emperor is. But I like this deck enough that I live with it. Because everything else about it is just amazing and so good. And I read with it all the rest of that weekend there, and I've been using it pretty much nonstop since I left. And this was what made me pull out the Margareta Peterson, and it's what made me finally give in and order the Petra K, because they each reminded me of this deck in a way. And so I love it. I don't love the War card, but I let it go. You know, nothing's perfect. If nothing else, it's here to remind me that I can't have everything I want, because otherwise this deck probably would be there. No, that's the charity. I'm not wild about the charity. The TBH. This is my life card. It just doesn't look like the rest of the deck, which again, you know, it's fine. But I don't mind it. Whoops, there's the Empress there that fell. So I seem to be walking through this whole bad boy because I love this deck so much, and I was just not anticipating it. So that's a really weird moon card, right? But I like it. I think the Knights have a different title, and I can't remember what they are. No. Maybe they don't. I like that the tide, it just reminds me of like the Prince of Tides, that the cup suit is tides. There's winds, tides, fire, and gardens. Stranger is the knight, which, you know, not that sort of works. I don't mind that much. I guess I don't need to walk through the whole thing. I keep waiting for that terrible Emperor. I love that card to come up. So good. I love this deck so much. And again, it was a complete and total surprise. There he is. Hate it. Hate that it's war. I mean, this. I actually like the image more than I like the chariot. But if I just sort of want to scratch that out and put the emperor on it. But I let it go. I let it go. I adore, and I'm the backs. All right, so there's a couple things I don't like about it, but it's it's like falling in love with a person. You're not going to like everything about them, and there are going to be some things about them that are going to make you want to smother them in their sleep, but you don't, because the rest of them is the part that you love, and imperfection is human, and I do think this deck is kind of superlative. So. Other interesting things for the month was the Boleyn Oracle, which I have not had time to sit down and explore, and the Thierry Marchetti's beautiful retrospective tarot, which I think is my favorite of his decks. Which I've mentioned it twice, so let's just pull it out here. Whatever. So again, comes in a tin, came wrapped in like a satin cloth, which I just don't have patience for when it comes to rewrapping decks and things. It either should come in a box or a tin or a bag, but signed card. There are some extras in it. I think I may have left both Hierophants in here. There's a Faith and a Hierophant. I think I may have left them both in here, which... so there are... I did a walkthrough of this. Jennifer Ball did a walkthrough of this. Jennifer Ball went and did like a comparison of the decks that she has. So, you could sort of see what's what. And again, there's just a handmade, there's like a handmade quality to this deck, to the art, which I've always liked Thierry Marchetti's art. It's always very digital. It's just, that's not my jam. This is that, but the way he unified the cards has a really handmade quality to it, which... And it may just be a filter, but I just think it's good. It also has a few sort of multicultural cards in it. Not necessarily enough, but enough. This devil still sort of like makes me go, holy fuck. So I haven't used this deck much, though, because I really, really decided to try to limit myself to a few. And the few that were, I showed you a bunch because a couple were gifts. One, the Victorian Romantic I used maybe 2 or 3 times. But the Japaridza, the 8 Coins Tattoo Tarot, and the Margareta Peterson were the 3, and then I allowed myself the 1 Marseille, which again, Marseille is Marseille in a way, and I have a bunch that I love, but I got that there, and I wanted to sort of explore it, because I liked the cardstock, but again, the cardstock is the thing that's keeping me from probably leaving it in my usual rotation of Marseille decks. So the usual 2 or 3, the usual 3 are the Marshmallow, the Jean Noblette, and the CBD. And then I have a couple others that sort of rotate in and out. But yeah, so those are my decks for the month. I haven't really done this thing where I limit myself to decks ever, because I really just I reach for what I sort of feel like I want to work with, or whatever's new, and most of these were new, not the Margareta Peterson, but everything else was new to my collection, so, but I'll tend to cycle decks in and out, and then, maybe never use them again, I don't know, but, I do feel like these bunch are clearly going to stay, in the repertoire, and there's not a whole lot that I'm like, reaching out for to get in the coming month. So I may just keep using this lot of them. I'll probably trade out the Millennium Marseille back for the CBD and put the Millennium on the shelf. I didn't do a whole lot of Lenormand readings or Sibylla readings this month. So not much to talk about there. Although I think I did a talk about the Anna K. Lenormand. When I am reading with Lenormand, that's the one I tend to reach for right now. Yeah, so that was my month. That was May. Curious to hear what you guys worked with, and as always, I hope you're well.